You guys, it is your girl AP, and I am here with my lovely co-host Namade, and we are back for another episode of More Than My Size.
Hey everybody, it's Nimade, that African butterfly, as Alicia said, and we're so excited to have another week to talk to you guys. We actually just did our first clubhouse today, right, Alicia? Because we're recording on Thursday, and it was a fun time. We had a good conversation.
Absolutely, it was fun. It was our first time doing it, I think, together on Clubhouse. Namade is a Clubhouse pro. I'm always getting alerts that she's talking in somebody's room, and I'm just like, "Go, Namade!" Meanwhile, crickets over on APY Blog. But I aspire to get to that level of media as our illustrious social media correspondent here does. So today's topic, I'm actually piggybacking off of our brethren, our fellow podcasters, Positive Vibes maybe, who has been here with us. PVM has joined us here, not only on YouTube, but also on Spotify and of course on Instagram. And they had a conversation the other night on their live where they discussed thick, right? That was the title of it. And it was all the nuances and things involved with that adjective to describe larger bodied women. And if there was such a thing as, crossing the line beyond the point of what's actually thick into big and all this other stuff. It was a great conversation. It was interesting to get the male perspectives, to say the least. But something was brought up during that conversation that kind of got me thinking. And our fellow buddy Dash pointed out that he had once called this woman thick, and she read him the riot act, had to straighten him out because she did not like that terminology. And I think I'd never thought about it in those terms. So we just want to kind of discuss that today. Do we feel a way when men attach certain adjectives to us that maybe we don't identify with? Because I had my own take on that and I did comment on that. But Namade, what do you think?
I mean, there's not too many things where I'm like, oh, if you call me that, I'm super offended. Just because most of the time it's, the intent of how they mean it. And there isn't anything that I would say I'm upset about being called. I mean, I know my size, so if you call me fat or plump or whatever. I mean, I actually would just more so appreciate you not bringing it up or not talking about it. It's weird to me, with guys when they lead in with that, I love big girls. Okay, thank you. So if anything, I would just rather you, I don't know, treat me like a human and let's just move on, like someone you're attracted to, because obviously if you're hitting on me and you're talking to me, then I know that's what you like. So I don't need you to, go into it more than that. But yeah, there isn't really anything for me personally that I think is that I would find offensive being called by that.
It's so interesting you pointed it out. I definitely am not a fan of the man who's announcing. I had that happen. It was completely embarrassing when it did happen because it was in front of other people. I know didn't mean it in a bad way. And he and I are good friends now. We don't have any beef. It's nothing like that. But at the moment, I was just like, this is awkward. But in terms of that adjective being attached, so in my heyday, when I was walking around the streets of Philly, men would definitely be like, hey, thickums, or, thick John, come here, or, stuff like that. And it never bothered me. And beyond that, I've had men be like, hey, big girl, I love some of that or whatever. It never felt insulting, but I also feel like it was never insulting to me because I'm very aware of who I am. And my body size is not something that I am ashamed of. And it's not something that I don't get offended by the truth about myself, right? I can't be mad if you're like, hey, brown girl, or hey, black girl. Why would I? That's what I am. Or hey, girl with the fro, you not go frolicious. You're not going to feel offended because you obviously have that attribute to you. Is it the only defining thing about us, our size? No. But I think most men think the term thick is endearing because it's not like you're calling them fat. And I think that's the problem. Some women really have an idea about who they are and how they want to be perceived. And for many women, thick is not a compliment because they might be struggling with their own body image. And anything that is fat adjacent or even tiptoeing into the, territory of fat it's an insult to a lot of women. They don't want to be known as the fat girl. Like, and I think men maybe don't realize sometimes women's fragility with those types of things. So in calling a woman thick, you might be spiraling her into a whole different realm in her mind. Like, not,
Right.
oh, he think I'm cute, he think I'm thick. They're probably like, oh my God, I need to go on a diet, I gotta hit these,
Sure.
these squats. And it turns into a whole different thing.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like unless you really know a person and their body goals and all of that, like you shouldn't be commenting on people's bodies anyways, especially like if you see a change. So like let's say it's someone was slimmer and now they're a little bit bigger and you're like, oh, you're getting thick, because you hear that. Maybe that person didn't want to get thick. Maybe that person liked being slim and that person is really upset at the weight that they've gained. Or, when they compliment someone on losing weight, like unless they were purposely trying to lose weight, maybe that weight loss is because they've been going through like the worst stress of their life and that's why they lost all that weight. So you never really know. So it's best, I think, to just not comment on it. And like you said, like sometimes it's triggering for people because that's not how they would identify themselves. And thick has a very wide range, like wide to the point where, without naming names, I was talking to Alicia about a person and I was like, well, he said he's like thick girls, but I don't think he means like me thick. I think he means like slim thick. And she's like, well, you don't know that for sure. I'm like, I don't, but I feel like it. She's like, so let's check who he follows. That's what she does. So we were
FBI.
browsing to like try to get an idea of like, but it's true though. Like when a guy says they like him thick, now I personally wouldn't call me thick. Like, I mean, I'm thickety thick. So I wouldn't necessarily, walk around and be like, oh, I'm just a little thick. Like, no, I'm voluptuous and curvy and all of those other words you're free to use. And if thick is a word you want to use to describe it, go for it. I consider thick to be the smaller size of plus size is where I would use the definition of thick. And that's, I think it would be like a very voluptuously curvy, slimmer person or someone on the smaller side of plus, I think is where my thick range is. And that's the issue too, right? Is everyone has a different range of the word when they say it. So if someone calls you something that you consider like you're not in that range yet and they call you that, it's triggering for some people.
Yeah, and that's really honestly what it boils down to. So, and they actually touched on that in their podcast where they were referencing like, all right, she must not know, she's beyond thick. Like he was saying, like he's seen some women refer to themselves as thick, but in his mind, he's like, you're a little bit beyond thick. Like, and it reminds me to back in the day when you would be on like the chat lines, the party lines. I'm showing my age. I don't want to hear anybody's mouth. Okay. Or, and they're like, describe yourself or whatever. It made me think about in Friday when the babe said she looked like Janet Jackson. We all know she didn't look like nobody's Janet Jackson. I mean, besides the poetic justice braids, but he felt like, some women are kind of like deceiving themselves because they want to be able to have a better shot at a man. And I do think, I remember being back in the day, I would purposely like avoid describing my size because I didn't think it was important to talk about over the phone. I'm like, either like, so I'm not going to be like, yes, I'm super thick. I'm just gonna be like, I'm big.
Yeah.
And for you to decide how big is big.
This is before you guys could see each other?
Who, me and my husband?
Well, you and whoever. Like,
oh yeah, like, this is before like I used to be on the Black Planet, party lines, all that stuff. Now
the party lines, okay. Because I was gonna say, because I do like online dating not quite a bit. I go off and on because I get real bored real fast. But like one thing that is really important to me is I always have full body pictures, like, and several of them. And I don't understand people who don't. I mean, I do understand it because I used to be like that too, like, oh, all my pictures are from a cute angle because that's how I look the best. But then you now have the issue of being in this flirtation or this whatever with somebody who doesn't really know what they're getting. Like, could they like your size? And then you're like, well, I hope they like me so much that they don't care what size I am. Like, just don't do it to yourself. Like, put full body pictures. And like, I promise you'll still get swipes. I get a ton of swipes and I am full body. And I have several full body pictures as well as cute face pictures on there of me, but just so they know, like, I don't want to have a message from anybody who's like, oh, like I start to like them and then they're like, oh, I don't, that's too big for me.
Yeah.
Like, you see what you're getting up front. And then should you choose to come in and message me, that I assume you know and you think you can handle what you're seeing. So let go.
Yes. So like Party Lines, there's obviously no photos. Black Planet, I think I only had a face picture at the time on Black Planet, but I was like really young on Black Planet. So that was like a big part of why like a full body wasn't on there. I lied, so I was 18. I was not. But like even with How I Met Bear, we met on Craigslist. And not to like date, we weren't looking to date each other when we like met. So when we did
So
realize,
what were your categories under? Like, oh, just here for a friend?
he was an IT guy, yeah, and it was like here for a friend, and I was on the here for a friends, but I had like put out there like I needed my computer fixed.
Okay,
And he like responded to my messages or whatever, and we started talking in that way. And we were emailing back and forth for a while. I think we went over to AOL after that, like chat. Yeah, you guys. Yeah, we were on.
that was where I got into
I'm
trouble.
old and I don't care.
Chat rooms.
Yeah, and so then eventually what happened was like we got on to talking on the phone. And during that process, it finally came up like, what do you look like? I just told him like, have you ever been with a big girl? And he's like, yeah, like my ex she's like on the chunky side or whatever. So what does he do? He sends me a picture of himself with his ex, which I'm like,
was she bigger?
She wasn't bigger than me. No, not at all. I was probably the biggest girl he had messed with at that point. She was like a size 18, 20. I think he said at her largest, she was like a 22. But I think in the picture, she was like anywhere between a 16 to a 20. Like I can't really tell. She had a round face. So like I could tell she was a woman who has some girth to her. But looking at her, I didn't feel as if I was going to be his type. And not because of the size necessarily, but she had a very like clean cut, pristine kind of like about her business kind of look. I was, as we all know, I'm 5 years younger than my husband. So she was older than me. And also, in case y'all don't know, I was a little bit of a wild child back in the day. So I had piercings in my face. I had a tongue ring. Like I was out there. I had tattoos.
Alicia of now, fool you. You know, she was yesteryear.
Yeah, yesteryear. So like I had like 8 piercings in my ear. Like it was all over the place. Like I just had a lot going on. So I felt like that coupled with my size might be like, maybe he wouldn't be into it. So would he asked me to like send him some pictures. So I did. I sent him like 3 different photos. And the interesting thing, the first thing that came out of his mouth was, what are you mixed with? Like you look, and he wasn't saying it to be rude, but it was kind of like, you look Cuban to me. Because in this particular picture, my hair was curly, but I was sitting down. So you can kind of see my body, but all you could see was like my hair was like super curly. So that was the first thing out of his mouth. But then the other 2 pictures that were there, the one thing he said to me was like, in all 3 of your pictures, you look different. So I can't even really get an idea of what you look like. Now, 2 of the pictures I sent were like full body. So one was like me standing just up, and another was like me sitting down. And he said he couldn't really decipher like how big I really was. It was not until we met in person. Like at the time I had gone back to Connecticut briefly, and I had gone up to Philly to see him. And so I saw him before he saw me at the train station, and I was like so nervous. Like I saw him and I pretended like I didn't know he was there. So he walked over to me, he's like, hey, and I was like, hey. But I purposely, like, I won't lie, like I dressed down, like I put on, like, it was winter, so like I threw on like some sweatpants and a thermal, and I had on like some little furry boots or something like that, like, because I was not like, I don't know, like in my head I was worried he's gonna be like, she's so big. Like, no, turns out he gave no craps about my size.
You're gorgeous.
He
and
made
you
it
guys,
very
I mean,
clear.
that is the nice thing about like phone and internet, getting to know people. Like it does make you have a level of like getting to know them, their personalities, and like all that other stuff before the other thing matters. I think you should still have pictures and things like that, but
yeah,
it's
I mean,
nice.
I think the plus was I knew facially he liked me, but sometimes even pictures can be deceiving with body size. I get that now. There are plenty of people who follow me on Instagram, like a couple of weeks back, probably a couple of months now, I had shared a photo of my scale of like my weigh-in and just explaining like what the journey's been like. And there were people who were just flabbergasted, like, there's no way you could be 449 pounds. You don't look it.
Yeah.
And women constantly asking me, well, what kind of shapewear do you wear? Because I never see, this, that, and the third. And I'm like, I really don't wear shapewear.
Yeah, you're very firm plus. Like, because
But
you remember
I don't feel
I
firm.
was like, if my legs look like that, I'd wear shorts all the time too.
But I think that's what is so weird to me is the things that you guys say. When I look at myself, I see something totally different. And so I think that also plays into how women want to be seen, want to be perceived. But I've never fooled myself into being like, I'm not fat, I'm just thick. Like, I'm just like, yeah, I'm big, I'm fat. Like, it is what it is.
But I do think that like the way that even when we're like aware of it, they did a study once where they had people like they had to pick out their body type in a line, and women always picked out bigger than them, sometimes by like several sizes. So that just says like how we all view our bodies. Like if you had to pick a body in a lineup of what you thought your body would look like, you would, without even meaning to, probably pick someone who's a couple sizes bigger than you are, because that's how you see yourself.
I try, like, all right, so you ever see those things that are like, what's your body type? So like recently there's this app, it's called Insides. They're a plus size fashion only app, like where women can go so they can get a good idea of what clothes will look like on them if they shop at specific brands. I thought it's an awesome idea.
That
They
is
asked to
fun.
collaborate on it. So I did. And so when I was signing up, they have like this assessment tool, and it's like, what body type would you consider yourself? And it tells you to pick it so that it shows up in your bio, so that women who are looking for, let's say, circle shaped women, they can find them like that. And it's not, it's not to be divisive. It's just so that people are coming to look for your body type. But I struggled with trying, and they had a drawing and everything of the body. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm a circle. I don't know if I'm an H, because in certain ways, I'm just like, what does this mean? So I went on this website to like, they're like, input your measurements and we'll tell you what your size is.
Yeah.
I input my measurements and they're like, you're a bottom hourglass, meaning your measurements say that your bust and your hips are larger than your waist, but you're more bottom heavy, which is pretty accurate right now, especially with weight loss. Like my breasts are shrinking, unfortunately, so those are disappearing. But I don't see myself as an hourglass. I look at myself and I feel like a circle.
Yeah, you always say that. I'm like, no, you're not. I'm like, we have like the same type of figure.
No, and you always say no. Okay, so when I think hourglass, we're talking, I think
the numbers don't lie, Alicia. The numbers don't lie.
No, well, here's what I'm saying. Numbers are semantics, right? Yeah. So yes, on a technicality, my waist might be smaller than my bust and my hips, but I really don't have hips. And anyone with a good eye can see that. Like, just because I put my hand on my like waist.
But your body, when you look at it, you have that illusion. So hourglass isn't necessarily like ba-boom, ba-boom.
But I think that's how we all view hourglass, though. And that's why it's so hard for me to identify.
Shape. I just view it as an hourglass shape, so it doesn't have to be overly hippie.
So basically, I'm a circle and an hourglass. That's how I view it.
No, you're just an hourglass. Your shape and everything goes like this, like an hourglass. So it's an hourglass.
I hear you, but I think that's the biggest issue.
The word coming from my mouth. You're an hourglass.
I think that was my biggest issue with when I was younger and I was dating, especially like, so even though dating online was just kind of like manifesting at that time when people really start to utilize like social media to do that stuff, I was still very much I go out, and I'm out at the bars with my friends, I'm out at the clubs. So it wasn't really ever an issue in terms of that, because if you're approaching me, you know what I look like. So I don't have to feel a way about you calling me anything. However, online, I did exactly what you said. Like once I was older, past Black Planet, like my full body pictures were on MySpace, like my full body pictures were untagged. It was not something that I was like hiding, for the very reason that you said. I don't want to have to hear you cute, but I don't date big girls, or why you ain't tell me you was big. Like I don't want you to be surprised at what you're getting.
Like why set yourself up for that? Like why? Yeah, I mean,
Because
I do
some
understand
girls,
why.
it's like the whole premise behind catfish. It's
Right.
like,
Like people just are been told that people don't want bigger girls or people don't want
right.
whatever. So because of it, they feel like they have to represent this idea. When the truth is, there are people who want everyone and everything. No matter what your thing is, there's someone out there who wants it. So instead of spending all of your time pretending to be something else to fit a mold or to get something that doesn't want you,
The
be yourself.
problem with that though is there are a lot of us, a lot of women and men who always want what doesn't want them. So
Yeah,
instead of them
neglect that.
pursuing the opposite or even same gendered, but instead of them going for like the guy or the girl that is into them too, they want the ones that they feel are unreachable because it's like conquering.
So let's actually talk about that a little bit because we were going to that was going to be part of our topic for this week before we changed it to the other one. Because we were talking about like dating before, and I had said like how I'm just not in a place to date mostly because of my work and stuff, but part of it because of my size.
Mhm.
And part of that comes from, and I don't think it's that I have this like, oh, I don't want anyone who wants me. It's just that right now, especially at my size of being like an extended plus size, I think it's definitely more niche because it's bigger than your regular plus size, as far as people who are into it. And for the most part, I found that they are a certain type where they really like love the bigger body and want it, or like they are cool with our activities being like just hanging out at home all the time and doing nothing and watching TV or eating. And I've sort of settled for that before with a previous relationship, my ex of 4 years. And even going in, I was like, but we'll make it work. You know, we'll get him out there to do more things. And it didn't work. Instead, I stayed home all the time with him and got bigger. So for me, I am not trying to be a part of a dating pool that that I don't want to be a part of right now, if
Right.
that makes sense. So it's not like I'm like, oh, I really want this unattainable thing. But the thing is, I know the type of guy that I want. Like a great first date with him would be like walking around the city and like checking out new things and like having fun and just like exploring, or like on the weekends going to a park or going to that, like doing things, a good bit of staying home. I'm still an introvert. I still want to stay home and be a bum, but I do want to go out sometimes. But like right now, I'm physically at a point where it's harder than it should be to do those things. So I am obviously not going to get the type of person that I want who can do those things when I can't do those things. Like I'm all for being yourself, but also being realistic about what you're trying to match with. Not saying there aren't any guys out there who would want to.
I was
At
gonna
this
say, like, I get what you're saying, and in that sense, it makes sense. But in terms of like women actively pursuing men that they know
right.
don't want them because of the type of woman they are, that I don't understand. Like when I was younger, there was this guy, and he was my best friend. And he was like this pretty boy. Everybody loved him. He was so cute. He was so popular. We were just friends. The girls he typically went after were smaller than me. They were absolutely smaller than me. And so I was never really viewed as a problem, right? They knew I was his best friend, and it was like, oh, there's nothing going
Right.
on between them. And they were so brazen about it that they would like approach me and be like, put me on with your brother, or like, hook me up. What they didn't know was that we had like this intense, very juvenile, obviously, because we were like 17, 18, 19, whatever, but this intense, like Dawson's Creek type, whatever, from the hood, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And there was no creek and
Right.
there was no Dawson. But one of the things that prevented me from being able to tell him that I liked him, it took me so long to do that. I refused to open my mouth because I had seen what he liked. It was not until he one day, like one night, like, no, he didn't even verbally say it. We went to Six Flags, and like we were at Six Flags, and for whatever reason, like we were standing in line. It was really hot. I'll never forget. We were getting on the Batman ride, and he like put a towel over both of our heads to like block the sun, and then he just kissed me, and I had no idea why. I didn't know why he did it, and I like everything inside me like melted and got all fuzzy, and I was so then it was like, oh, okay, this is a safe space now to be able to tell him like, okay, yeah, I've
Yeah,
been
yeah,
thinking about it. And it definitely didn't go anywhere. Like
yeah.
it didn't go anywhere right away.
Do you
Like
think
it
it's
didn't
because
go
of your
anywhere.
size or because of other stuff?
It was other things, but so and this is how I know, like, I needed to take my lessons from my youth and apply it to my adulthood, but I did not. Red flags. So red flags were really a thing in that relationship we had. He was very emotionally controlling and abusive. But it was like almost in a narcissistic way. Like I would be like apologizing and wanting, like, he would find random reasons to have beef with me. And we'd have these falling outs, and then we'd come back together. And like one of those happened, like that day it happened. Right after that, like as we were leaving out, there was this young guy who, like, it was like all of us from our job. We had gone to Six Flags, we had all cut work. We went and had this day. There was this guy, he was newer, cute guy, like all the girls were loving him. He was light skinned, green eyes, blue eyes, whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, he and I were like close. Like I was cool with everybody.
Right.
He was really threatened by that relationship. And what happened was, at the last ride of the day, nobody wanted to get on it with the light skin bull. And so then he was like, Alicia, you want to get on the ride with me? I'm like, bet. It was like the elevator, like it picks you up and then drops you. So I'm like, yeah, I'll get on it with you. When I tell you, like, the bestie looked at me with like such evil in his eyes. And then after that, we had like this huge falling out. It was just this fight for no reason. The next day, I ended up hooking up with the guy who becomes my daughter's father. In fact, it's the day I got pregnant, because I was just being spiteful. I was like, I'm so tired of his foolishness that, like, I'm going to go do me. And I did. And I ended up pregnant. And then that pregnancy, I ended up calling him to tell him, like, all my friends, like, let them know I found out I was pregnant, but he was my best friend. And so I called him. I'm like, hey, do you love me? And he's like, yeah, of course. I'm like, you got me through everything. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I just found out I was pregnant today. And he gave me dial tone in response. Like, he hung up the phone on me.
What?
I did not see him again until I was maybe like 3 months pregnant. And that's only because one of our mutuals, like, she calls me, she's like, oh, Alicia, you want to go hang out at the mall? And I'm like, yeah. So she comes, she picks me up, we're driving, and she's like, yeah, do you know how to get to this park? When she said it, I'm like, wait, he lives right across the street from this park. So like, she drives over there, and guess who's coming out of the house? And I'm like, that is how we started talking again. Nothing physical ever happened between us, although he did try while I was pregnant, which was the weirdest thing. But nothing happened with us until after I had my daughter. It was a long span of time, like from the time I went with him to his after prom and stuff. Like, it was such a unique situation, but part of me feels like he was still ashamed because of my size.
No, yeah.
Because as much as there was like all this fire and energy between us, other people didn't know that unless you were like in our circle and in our clique. So it was like a lot of red flags going off there. He even reintroduced himself into my life as an adult, and it was kind of like still the same thing, like the same. So I guess like when it happened between us, nobody was supposed to know. It was like after this house party or whatever, and he was just like, you look so good. Like, because he had a fetish for like stockings. So I purposely put on stockings with this like short behind skirt or whatever, put on stilettos. It was like, okay. So it ended up happening. But at the time, he had a girlfriend. He had two, and one of which was his mom's friend, and one of which is a friend of my friend. Like, I knew her. And so he was like, nobody can know that this happens. Like, this is not something that, like, we're not telling people. So I'm like, all right, fine. Like, it's not gonna go bragging to anybody, whatever. And the experience was trash. Like, having a nice big Cadillac, but not knowing how to drive it, if you get my point. So I walked away from that like, this was awkward and nothing like what I thought it was supposed to be. The next day, when I wake up, my phone's blowing up, and I have all these messages from people, him included. He's snapping because he's like, why did you open your mouth? Why did you tell? Everybody in our clique knew. And I don't know why everybody knew. And come to find out, his cousin had been there, which we knew he was there. I did not know the cousin had a crush on me, and he did. And I guess at some point he had asked him, like, yo, D, is it cool if like I get with Alicia or whatever? And he's like, and so out of anger and like hurt, I guess, from his cousin telling, finally doing it with me, he told another young lady, and she told everybody. But in that moment, it was like, I'm not into, like, the things he was telling other people was like, no, she's fat. Like, I would have never.
That's,
And
I
was
would
like,
die Oh, I feel so bad for baby Alicia. I
In my
would
mind,
die.
part of me was like, I conquered the nigga, right? Like that. Oh, sorry, ninja. That all the girls wanted. Like he was
Yeah,
the type of guy that like the big girl can't get,
right,
but he wanted me. You know what I
right,
mean? Even if not publicly.
right.
After that, though, I learned that I don't want men who do not want me and
Yeah.
can't want me publicly. And then I rolled right into a similar situation right after that situation. I moved to Philly, like, and got involved with someone who was doing the same thing. Like, I don't want anybody
But I
to
think they do
know.
that to us a lot. And it's interesting for me because like now I almost wish I could go back and talk to like some, not that I had a lot of boys in high school, college, but a couple. And I almost wish I could ask them like, was the secrecy, because in my mind, actually, it was always just that they didn't want anyone to know they liked a bigger girl. But I don't know why it also never even occurred to me also until recently, because I was one of four Black kids in my whole like graduating class. I've said that before. And so now I also wonder if like that was part of it. Like I
Yeah,
wish,
oh, you being Black.
yeah, like I wish I could
Mm.
talk to them and be like, was the secrecy because of my weight or my race or both?
I
Like,
had a secret white boyfriend. I think that's a possibility.
yeah,
I think it's a possibility. And the crazy thing is, like, I won't lie, and I know this is gonna sound really bad, but there was something when I would go out, especially like when I was really coming into my confidence more, like when I moved to Philly, and I was bagging the guys that the girls didn't think I could, like nobody thought I was a threat.
yeah.
Like we would go out and they were not expecting the reaction that I got, including the guy that I was messing with who was ashamed of me. He would find himself in these very awkward and uncomfortable positions because sometimes his colleagues and his homies was like, hey, like what's good? But you don't want to tell anybody we're messing with each other. So
Right,
you don't have a leg to stand on. But
right,
instead, behind closed doors, he's fussing me out. Like, well, I don't think it's appropriate for you to do this. But in the meantime, for me, I'm like, I'm in these streets winning. Like I'm in these streets
right,
conquering the ninjas that they say we can't have.
right.
Like it was, to me, it was the ego stroke. I won't lie. But as it was going on, I was less and less interested in that because no matter how much I'm able to bag a guy or even get the guy to like really pursue me into a relationship, the fact that it was such an issue to begin with because I was big, it's a turn off.
Yeah.
It was not, it's like you don't,
But at
you
least you
find
went through that journey. Like, I mean, I've never really been one to be like, oh, I want the guy that the other girls can't. I don't know. It just never has
it's not worth it. I'll tell you
it
that.
interested me. But I mean, like, at least you have grown past that. Like, I still see and hear women in our age, we're both in our 30s, who still have that mentality and still have the hiding their bodies and still have the I want the person that I can't have. And it's just like, sis, why are you doing it to yourself?
Yeah, and
Accept yourself and then pursue someone who accepts you and you'll be a lot happier.
right, and that is the thing. Put the full body picture out there. It's just gonna weed out the people who aren't for you. Like it's that
By the
simple.
way, this conversation has made me pick the title for my next article for Queen Size Magazine. It's going to be Post That Full Body Pic, sis.
Yes, post it. Because here's how I feel like I think a lot of women they won't post the full body or whatever because they feel like it will lessen their opportunities at dating. And it probably will with certain men, but it
Yeah.
could possibly increase your options to dating with the men who want you now.
That's the thing
On
is
the
like,
flip
why
side
would
of
you
that,
want a bunch of, why do you want a bunch of men in your DMs who ultimately don't want you? And I know it's so nice to think like, well, he'll fall for my personality and then he won't
no,
care. Well, first of all, they don't like the lying, so you're already off on a bad foot. And then he's still gonna care. And the fact that you care that much about him caring says that you know that. So don't do it to yourself. Like
don't do
don't
it to yourself.
do it to yourself.
But now on the flip side of that, I will say this. Along that journey with me growing up, I it wasn't that guys didn't like me. They were never the guys I wanted. So it was always like a ninja that was shorter than me, right? Like
Mhm.
I will never forget. I was so mad. Like me and my friends had met up with a group of kids from Hartford, Connecticut. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but we lived in New Haven. They lived in Hartford. We all used to link up and have fun and go out. I had the hugest crush. I will never forget. His name was Timothy. He was like little Omar Epps to me. Like I just was like, oh my God, like I love him. And he didn't like me, you know what I mean? Like, and
Right.
my friends knew I was crushing on him. So they thought it was cool to like be like, well, his homie likes you. And I'm like, who's the homie? And the homie ends up being this other kid. He's like light skinned, which if you know me, you know that's not my thing. And then he was short to boot. Like, and when I say short, I'm not exaggerating. So about that time, I was probably between like 5'6", 5'7". I maxed out at 5'8.5". That's how tall I am now. He was literally like 5'2".
Mm.
So
Yeah.
he had this huge crush on me, and I was so annoyed. I was like, no. And then like we
But
had
why
a
are you
neighbor.
annoyed? Like you wouldn't be annoyed if the guy you wouldn't want the guy you had a crush on to be annoyed about him having a crush on you.
Yeah, I wouldn't, but it was just the reality of the situation, which is why I never asked my friends to hook me up with the guy. Like once I knew I wasn't his type, I never even told him I had a crush on him,
Yeah, yeah.
because it was like, I'm not gonna play myself. My friends knowing that I didn't like him and he wasn't my type, and them thinking that this was gonna be a consolation prize, pissed me
Yes,
off even more.
that's true. Yeah, because it's like they expect us to be like, oh, whoever you can get. Like,
Yeah,
no,
and
not whoever I
that's
can get,
the
because I can
problem.
get what I want to
So
get.
when you
So
are larger, sometimes they feel like you should just take what you can get. Like, and
no,
even within that squad, one of my girlfriends, she started dating one of the guys, and I had a crush on his brother. They tried to make it a thing. Well, I won't say like I had a crush on him. I thought he was cute.
yeah.
Um, they tried to make it a thing. Like we went go-karting one night. They tried to make it into like this situation where everybody could date, but we had another friend of ours with us, and he ended up liking her. So then I
Mm.
ended up being out while she's like canoodling with this guy that I'm supposed to be like,
Oh,
out with. And I'm just like, I got tired of being in those situations and feeling like y'all really think I'm out here deserving of
yeah.
scraps. Like that I don't, not that they just weren't for me.
That's
They
the
weren't my
crazy. Well,
type.
I mean, I think part of it is that people feel bad because people do that to them, right? It's like people put their perception or expectations of you on you, whether it's when we're talking about relationships or even like just life goals, like what they think your limitations are is what they put on you. And sometimes it's frustrating seeing like through the eyes of someone else who they think you should date when you're like, this is my type. And then it's frustrating as well because when you've expressed your type and what you're looking for and what you want, and then they suggest someone like blatantly opposite or blatantly like
Just
different,
because
it's
he
like,
likes you.
why do you think that I can't have that person? And I think that's also what leads to like catfishing, because now all the people around you in real life have been like, you can't have the type of person you want. So of course you're not going to get on the internet and pretend to be yourself. You're going to pretend to be the type of person the person you want wants. It's just like it's a vicious
But I
cycle.
didn't want, and that was the thing. Those experiences, while they may seem really juvenile, and they were because I was a teenager, they are what shaped me into becoming who I was, and even how I interacted with men. I
Yep.
knew, like, as I got older, like, I had no interest in being with someone that didn't want to be with me. So it really shifted how I decided to move amongst, the dating scene. Like, no, I'm not going to entertain you just because you like me. I don't have to date you. Like, it's not a requirement. And if you think that I have to, and I've had that come out of men's mouth, like, well, you big, so it's not like you. All right,
Like,
but
you're the one who
here
wanted
you
me. You're the
are.
one who approached me.
I
I'm
heard
not
you
the
were
one
looking
being
for
rejected in
me.
this
Here I am. Like,
situation.
here you are. Like, you're dying to get in these drawers, but you
Right.
think I'm supposed to accept it just because I'm big. That is a thing that I really wish that more women would just operate from that space of, will it probably make the dating scene a little bit less unbearable because there are a lot of men who won't date big women? Yes. But the long term will be,
Trust me, sis, there's still so many of them out there. And
there are.
I
You just
promise
have to take
you,
your time, and you can't settle.
don't settle,
Don't
but trust
settle.
me, your DMs will not be dry. Your whatever, like they will
I'm
find you.
married and the DMs aren't dry,
And
okay?
they,
Like,
right, she's married. I have big full size pictures. No matter what dating app I'm on, they won't stop. So don't think that you putting all of yourself out there suddenly mean like men aren't attracted to you. Nope, it's just that you're gonna get the men who are actually attracted to you.
and then you can decide if that's what you want.
Yep.
You do not have to say yes and feel
Yep.
like this is the only man I'm going to be able to get. Because the one thing that I did a lot of at some point was like I said, being involved with the guy after I moved to Philly, who pretty much was behaving the same way as my ex-best friend. After, like, I didn't really want him. Like
Mhm.
there's a blog article on my blog about that situation because it was really something that impacted my mental health, my emotional health, and how I viewed myself. And the takeaway from that was I was settling for mediocre, less than mediocre, you know what, somebody who wasn't even like the best looking, but had a whole lot to say about what I need to do with my body and myself. And he wasn't even cute. He was short. Like he was shorter than what I would normally date. And
I
that's what I get
honestly,
for settling.
I truly feel like there is nothing worse than getting like betrayed or broken up with by someone you settled for. Like, like it's like a different level of hurt and pain when you're like, I didn't
It's
even like you to
humiliation.
begin with. Yeah, because I had that with an ex in college, and we actually ended up staying together after he cheated, which I helped me now realize that I can't be with people after they cheat. Like there's actually no coming back from that in a relationship with me. But
Maybe
yeah,
we
I
can talk
just
about that
was
next.
so, yeah, we should talk about the next. But yeah, I was just so like on top of the hurt and the betrayal. It's like you pursued me. Like you pursued me for a long time. And I said no, 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 no. Then I had a meltdown and said yes. And even like when I went to visit him in school, his friend walked into the room and we like eyes met and we're like, zoop. Like he was so cute, totally
Girl,
my
you should
type.
have.
But I was like, well,
If that start
I can't.
acting up, switch
Well,
and take his friend. Okay.
but I couldn't. So I was just like, even though we like had a vibe, and you could tell too, like he thought I was cute. It was like, and I very rarely have those moments. I usually just think everyone thinks of me as like a friend. But that was definitely one of those moments where like I instantly knew like we clicked. And so like we were flirting, he ended up going out with us, but I went home with the person that I came to the school to visit with because I was that type of lady. In hindsight, though, I wish I had went with a friend.
Listen,
But yeah, it's just hard because then later when I found out he cheated, I'm like, I didn't even
I
want to
could
be
have
with
smashed your
you
homie.
to
Okay.
begin with.
But
How dare
ladies,
you?
like let us know, what are your stances on full body pictures, putting it out there on dating apps? Are you forthcoming when you're online dating about what you look like? Are you afraid to go there with a guy that you think won't want you because of your size? Like, let us know how you guys are handling the dating scene. We're going to wrap it up here so we're not holding you guys hostage the whole time. But of course, sound down below in the comments. And of course, catch us over on Instagram at more than my size _ the show. And as we always encourage, catch us here on Anchor. That's our home podcast site, but you can catch us on all streaming platforms. Amadi, thank you as always for your insight. And you
Happy
got
to
some
be
gems to
here.
this I think we're going to pilfer through later on and discuss, and maybe we can come up with the next topic for next week's show. But until then, you guys, bye.
Bye.